All right, guys, we have a very, very exciting situation. Dark Magician has finally received finally has gotten the support that came out months ago for Blue Eyes. Dark Magician finally can play at full power. There's an awesome bundle. You can get a Dark Magician Royal Rare on top of the Royal Rare. You can buy the Structure decks and then get a bunch of the Dark Magician cards if you held out on buying them, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Dark Magician. Very, very accessible now. Very almost like a budget deck, and a pretty strong one at that. Definitely one of the better decks. This deck was made by VTuber PB. I believe this is the most competitive version of the deck. It's link based. If you want to see the fusion based version of this deck, or if you want to see extensive gameplay on Dark Magician, check out VTuber PB. His channel will be down below in the comment section, or otherwise. He does Dark Magician content year round. Probably one of the most committed Dark Magician players on the entire planet, let alone the platform. But yeah, this is his deck. There were a few like innovations we made together over the years, but this is it. So for this deck, we've got 2 copies of Dark Magician. You should really only play 2 copies of Dark Magician, just because usually a third one ends up being a very bricky situation. And again, this is probably the most competitive version you can possibly play. So I'd say 2 Dark Magicians is usually best. You play 3 copies of Magician Souls. It's the best card probably in the archetype because it just does so much for the deck. It puts Dark Magician graveyard, special summons Dark Magician if you want to. It can special summon itself. It can get rid of dead spell and trap cards, and this deck does have dead spell and trap cards, so you can easily get rid of duplicate and dead spell and trap cards, and then draw more hand traps and skill drain and stuff like that, so you can draw into other stuff. Next, we've got 3 copies of Maxi. It's just the best hand trap in Master Duel. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is the case. It is the best hand trap in Master Duel. Then we've got 3 copies of Magician's Rod. This is your best starter in the deck. There aren't any normal summons whatsoever in the entire archetype. This is your only normal summon, and it's very integral. You normal summon Rod, you get to search. Depending on your hand, you can grab Circle, you can grab Salvation, you can grab Soul, you can, well, usually you won't grab Eternal Soul. You grab Salvation, and then Salvation gets you Soul. You can also grab, and then after you're done, you just make it into an Artemis the Moon Maiden, and once you do that, yeah, then you can recur it the next turn, because if you activate a spell trap card, you can add this back to your hand by tributing the Artemis Moon Maiden. So it recurs itself, and it's a normal summon search. Like it's a very, very, very strong card in the deck. It is by far the best normal summon you can play. Next, we've got 3 Ash Blossoms. This is the other really, really good hand trap in the game. 2 Nibiru is just because combo decks can be really tough to play against when you're going second with Dark Magicians, because the deck doesn't have a lot of natural board breakers. The only like natural board breaker that the deck really has is the Magical Circle, which is right here. This is it. Dark Magical Circle is really the only like board breaking card. You have like Strike, hand traps like Imperm, and like it's not the best deck at breaking big boards. So usually Nibiru is pretty good. You can outgrind a control deck. Like if you're playing against Labyrinth, you can definitely outgrind it, because Labyrinth, although it's a very, very strong deck, you get to banish once per turn over and over and over and over, and you can recur a lot of your resources in ways that they can't, honestly. This is the new card, Illusion of Chaos. It's a very good card. I know it's a ritual monster, and it seems odd. Like, why are you playing a ritual monster? I don't see any ritual spells. For those of you that don't know, this card basically, you just reveal it, and then you can add any Dark Magician. You can add a Dark Magician or a non-ritual monster that lists Dark Magician in its text. Meaning, most importantly, you can search Magician Souls. So now you have even more copies of Magician Souls, and also you can search Rod. You can do a few cool things. You can leave this thing in your hand. You always have to place at least 1 card back, and placing 1 card back, sometimes it can get rid of bricks. It can do a lot of like positive things. Like you can, for example, if you were playing like Palladium Oracle Mahad, for example, you place Palladium Oracle Mahad on top of your deck, and then you draw a card and you get to summon him automatically. Like it does a lot of really, really cool stuff. But yeah, Illusion of Chaos is really good. It's just a consistency card. It helps you get to Rod. It helps you get to Magician Souls. It can help you get to Dark Magician. Like it just adds another layer of consistency to the deck that's very important. Next, we've got Terraforming. This searches a variety of field spells. We are playing the Magician's Salvation in addition to Chicken Game. So we're playing both of those. Very important. It thins the deck very, very quickly. Dark Magic Attack. A lot of people cut this card. I think that's very foolish. This card is so good in the. You need something. We have Nibiru for the combo decks. We have Nibiru for that matchup. Now for the Spawn Trap card decks, it's nice to have something like Dark Magic Attack, because if you're playing against them, it's nice to have a searchable Harpy's Feather Duster that is a total blowout against your opponent. It's just very good for those matchups. That's Harpy's. The Dark Magic Attack is not a card that I may have included in the TCG, but in Master Duel, it almost seems like you need to play it just because it's a best of one format, and sometimes you play against really like weird matchups. Like you sit down and you have a 45-minute game against Labyrinth, and you need something like Dark Magic Attack to help you kind of even the playing field. Preparation of Rites lets you search any level 7 or lower ritual monster, meaning you can search the Illusion of Chaos that I just showed you, the ritual monster. Secret Village is, if you're going first and you activate this, most of the time you will win. It prevents your opponent from activating spell cards if they do not control a spellcaster. Even if they do manage to pull a spellcaster on board, you can just summon a Dark Magician during their turn, Dark Magical Circle, and then banish whatever spellcaster they summon, locking them back out of spells. This is again an auto win against a lot of just a variety of decks. A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh's starters are very much spell based, so if you can not only the starters but also their board breakers are often spell based. So you think things like Lightning Storm, Raigeki, Harpy's Feather Duster, if they have those in their hand and they cannot get a spellcaster on board, they can't activate them. Also their combo starters, so like Sprite Starter for example, you can't even activate that if you don't control the spellcaster. So this is a fantastic inclusion. Just another field spell that we play while terraforming, so important that we play 3 Chicken Game. This is basically Upstart Goblin on a field spell. It does have some other like cool uses where the player who has lower life points takes no damage. So sometimes your opponent thinks they're about to finish you off and they forget that this thing's on the field and they end up not doing anything to you. Magician's Salvation is the other field spell. Typically you don't search this with Terraform, you just search this off the rod, and then this sets the Eternal Soul into your back row automatically, which is really cool. And by doing that, you basically place 2 spell and trap cards onto the field, and if you want to, you can actually use Magician's Souls to just get rid of this afterwards and then just draw a free card. Really good. Free resource again. Dark Magical Circle is very important. It basically banishes a card every single turn. It's one of the more important cards in the deck. And the whole looking at the top of your deck's not that important, but banishing every single turn is. Soul Servant is a very good card. It places a card from... it can place any card that lists Dark Magician in its text on the top of your deck. That is like the quick effect that it has, and then it has another effect where you can banish it, and then for every Dark Magician, or if you can have a Dark Magician, Palladium Oracle Mahad, and Dark Magician Girl and Palladium Oracle Mana in the graveyard, you can draw 1 card for every one. We're not playing anything other than Dark Magician because all of those cards, honestly, they seem amazing, but they end up being really, really big bricks. Through extensive testing, you just never want to draw a Dark Magician Girl or Palladium Oracle Mahad or any of that nonsense. You'd rather just draw hand traps that actually prevent your opponent from doing things. Nukes, we play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Again, a really good hand trap. We try to just play the best hand traps here, nothing foolish. 2 strikes because, yeah, you draw into strikes and imperms and skill drain, for example. Skill drain is like almost integral to the deck. The only thing skill drain really shuts down, like honestly shuts down, is your link plays and Rod's normal summon effect. Other than that, skill drain literally shuts down nothing, and it helps you immensely, especially in the grind game. It's like really, really, really strong. You can still use the graveyard effect of Rod, and you can still send for cost for the Magician's Soul. So if you actually want to get rid of skill drain at any time, you just activate Magician's Soul's effect, send skill drain to the graveyard for the effect to draw, and then the effect to draw will resolve, and you will basically at any given time you can remove the skill drain off your own board if you feel like it's bothering yourself. And then for the last card, which is one of the more important cards in the deck, is Eternal Soul. This is like the Achilles heel of the deck, but it's also like really, really strong. It's like the real Achilles. If they pop it, you can oftentimes lose a duel, but if they don't pop it, you win the duel. For the extra deck, very important. This is the most important monster in the extra deck. It's Galaxy Tomahawk. The deck doesn't have a lot of ways to like fusion summon a ton of stuff on turn one. That's often a very difficult thing to do, unless you're playing like a danger engine where you're putting a lot of things into the graveyard. It's not easy to put out like 2-3 fusion monsters on the first turn. So what you do is you just play kind of like a stun game with hand traps and trap cards and skill drain, and then the following turn you make a Galaxy Tomahawk, detach, and then you summon a ton of tokens. You use those tokens to make link spiders and all of the other little monsters that I'm showing you here. And then basically out of those you can go into the larger monsters like Access Code Talker, and you can go into Crusadia Avermax, and then you can go, Selene, stuff like that. But most importantly, you can actually go into this guy, which is the Arrival at Ignister. It's just 3 monsters with different attributes. You can summon it, and then it's unaffected by all other monster effects. It's 6,000 attack, unaffected by everything. This thing is absolutely outrageous. It's so difficult for your opponent to out this thing. Again, you can just use the tokens to make different attributes, and then make this giant unaffected monster. 5,000 attack. And how does your opponent out this thing? I mean, they don't, unless they have an underworld goddess. They're literally not an underworld goddess or a kaiju. They're just not getting rid of this card. And for them to put an underworld goddess onto the field while you have all of these other interruptions is very difficult. But let me just run through some of the other link monsters here. We've got Link Spider, obviously, normal monster, pretty easy. Dark Magician, a normal monster, you can put it in the graveyard at any given time. You've got the Relinquished Anima. Artemis is very important. Probably the most important monster in the extra deck other than Galaxy Tomahawk. Might be more important than Galaxy Tomahawk because it gives you plays with Rod. And then we've got Nightmare Phoenix, spawn trap cards, IP, the Dark Charmer. We've got the Nightmare Unicorn. You can go into this out of the IP during your opponent's turn. Selene works wonders in this deck because it's a spellcaster, Dark Magician. It summons a spellcaster. You play 1 million spell cards, so you can oftentimes summon Dark Magician back pretty easily. Obviously, Crusadia Avermax, another card that's tough to out. And Access Code Talker and Arrival at Ignister. Yep, this is the entire deck. Again, if you want to see significant like replays, very good replays, go to VTuber PB's channel, and he's got a lot more in store for you guys. Thank you for watching. La 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 la.